I guess it's time to take a big sigh of relief. We're in the process of closing the polls. We've received approximately 30 precincts out of the 360 across the county. I do want to explain the process briefly. We have 3 satellite drop-off locations for the county precincts outside of the city. The city precincts will actually deliver the supplies back to the county building here. So it's going to start off a little slow, and that's why you've probably only seen about 20 or 30 precincts reported up to date. Once those satellite offices or drop-off locations start returning their supplies, you'll see the count each 15 minutes go up proportionately throughout the night. At this point, I have no reason to believe that the information I gave earlier, that we will conclude the count around 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning will change and have about 95% of that count approximately 11:30 or 12 o'clock. Now, obviously, occasionally our poll workers may leave a memory card at the precinct. That could delay the count as well. We've already had one of those situations, and we do have a staff member on site to retrieve that. I wanted to give some final numbers as well. We had over 2,850 provisional voters vote here this election in the county building. That brings our total to 85,598 total votes cast either here at the Board of Elections today or the previous 34 days of early voting here in Montgomery County. We've got a very high return rate at this point. We have a 94.6% return rate, which equates to only about 5,400 ballots still not returned. In any typical election, we have about 2 to 3% of those ballots not returning. And then, of course, if those individuals voted today, they were required to vote a provisional ballot. So that's the final numbers for 2012. Of course, during the 10-day canvass period that we'll go through, we'll determine the eligibility of those provisional ballots, and then it will be included in the official count. We are in the process of determining how many provisional ballots were cast at each precinct. As we process the supplies, we'll track that number, and we'll have that at the end of the evening for anyone that may want that number. We do have approximately 1,300 ballots that need to go before the members of the Board of Elections for their approval to remake. That will be included in the final count as well. As I'm sure you saw the absentee results, we scanned over 170,000 ballots and reported those at approximately 7:40. And then, as I said, we'll start the cumulative reports every 15 minutes until we conclude this evening. Just to tie the election or at least to end the election, again, it was a very successful election here in Montgomery County, being the 4th largest county in the state of Ohio, deploying 2,500 machines, over 1,600 poll workers. Obviously, there's going to be a few situations across the county that machines didn't work, poll workers didn't show up, we had some presiding judges oversleep, those type of things. But overall, it was a very, very successful election here in Montgomery County, and I'm very glad to report that. I would also like to acknowledge publicly the effort of the Montgomery County Board of Elections staff. They did a wonderful job. They sacrificed their time with their family. They worked 7 days a week over the last 60 days to accomplish this task, and I could not be more proud of them and for their efforts. With that, I'll turn it over to questions and answer any questions that you may have.
Of the precincts, are there any that are still allowing those folks that were standing in line, still allowing them to vote right now? Is everybody done?
We did receive one report out of Huber Heights, Aldersgate Church, I believe, that had about an hour wait toward the end of the night. I believe at this point they are concluding their wrap up and putting the machines up, putting their supplies and en route to deliver those machines. I have not received any other reports of any long lines at the close of polls. Any other questions that I can answer?
You mentioned long lines at the polls, but the number of election days being reduced from the consolidation of polling places? Were there more long lines this time than previous time?
Well, again, over the last 4 years, we've made many decisions that we used the 2008 election as a benchmark. We added new technologies, and of course, anytime you make major changes and reduce precincts from 548 down to 360, reduce polling locations from 360 down to 176, you're going to see a difference on election day, and I think we saw that difference today. However, with the implementation of electronic poll books, additional training, with a polling location supervisor on site, any line, any time where voters did not have to go to a specific table. We actually took provisional voters out of the regular line that allowed us to process the 95% of regular voters quicker. I think paid huge dividends, and again, we don't have the final numbers, but all indication points to a very high turnout for this election. And so from that perspective, I think it was the right decision, and I think the game plan that we had in place worked as expected.
As far as the absentee and early voting, are these numbers up in comparison at all to 2008?
We did see about a 7,000 increase in both absentee and early voting. Of course, that includes the provisionals that were passed. That is slightly higher than we had in 2008 as well. So I think between just the participation on an early basis trending with more and more people choosing to do that, the controversy with weekend hours, I think motivated a lot of people to get out and show the importance of having extended hours and weekend played a role in that increase.
With as many absentees that we had coming in, were you surprised the lines were as long as they were today, given how many people already made it out to vote?
Well, if you track polls and you look at the polls on not only a national basis, state basis, even local, and factor in the fact that we had over 70 issues on our ballot, I think it was important to the electorate across our county to get out, to participate in this election and have their voice heard. And I think that's what I chalk up the higher turnout to be. And again, we haven't seen final numbers, so I don't know exactly if it was a true increase from 2008 yet or not. But obviously, as we get the votes in, we'll know that later.
Can you just to be clear, break down the provisional ballots right now that we are expecting to have out of Montgomery County?
Well, we know we had 2,850 cast here, during the early voting period, including today, which is slightly higher. If that's any indication, then we'll probably have a slight increase countywide that was cast today here in Montgomery County. I'm expecting somewhere between 12,000 to 14,000 provisional ballots countywide at the end of the night.
Is that, how many more is that than normal?
Typically, we'd have somewhere between 10 to 12,000 for a presidential election. So I look for that to be, 10, 15, 20% increase potentially.
And what does it take for those to actually be counted? I mean, if you go to the wrong place, then you're not, the provisional ballot's not going to count, right? So as long as you have the right, if you the right church.
Well, there's some litigation going on that now, and I know, I think there's a lawsuit that was filed recently, potentially even today, I heard, with provisional ballots. That's always a very controversial issue here in Ohio. I think the fact that if the race is close at the end of the night, they become even more important. And of course, that's yet to be seen. But provisional ballot process is a very complex process. There's like 9 reasons that'll trigger the provisional process. There's requirements under law that they have to provide proper identification, the last 4 digits of their social, sign it, and make sure they provide us with their new address. And they have to vote at their home precinct. We try to be proactive with a lot of our efforts in terms of taking the provisional voter out of the regular line, have a more skilled and more trained poll worker handle those type of voters, and hopefully during the canvass period when we determine that eligibility, we'll have a much higher rate due to those efforts.
So because there has been concern with the number of provisional ballots, so those that are in the right precinct and their information is still out correctly, doesn't count. If they're in the wrong precinct and the information is still not wrong, it doesn't count.
Correct. Of course, the key is they have to be a registered voter here in either Montgomery County or one of the other counties in Ohio. We have a very high percentage of folks that are not registered that will vote on election day provisionally, and if they're not registered 30 days prior to the election, they're not eligible. That's usually around a 7 or 8% rate of the provisionals. So from just the typical number, we can expect about 1,200 to 1,400 of those provisional ballots not to be valid because the individuals were not registered within that 30-day period.
I'm sorry, you have to be registered in this county or
in this county or a county in the state of Ohio, 30 days prior to the election. One or the other. We do not have same-day registration in Ohio.
So if you go to the wrong precinct, does it still count?
It does not. You're required to vote in your home precinct based on the residential address.
Right.
Your current
So registered anywhere and voting in the correct precinct.
based on your current address.
You still on track for that 71, 72% of registered voters?
I have not seen an indication that would deviate more than 1 or 2% at this point. You really need to see more precincts and see a bigger sampling to make a final determination. But I think that's, based on historical data, that's a fair number right there.
And when will this lawsuit be heard? Tomorrow?
Well, of course, it's not a situation the county really gets involved with. It's usually on a statewide basis or even a higher level. It'll go probably filed in the federal court. It'll probably go to the appellate court, and as many of the cases did this year, maybe even the United States Supreme Court. Obviously, if Ohio and their 18 electoral votes play a part in the decision-making of the next president, then you can probably reach the United States Supreme Court before it's settled.
Can you explain the process as far as the provisional ballot one more time? You have 10 days to verify that. So if this race is tight, it could go that long.
There's a 10-day canvass period that we look up those provisional ballots into our database to verify if they're registered in our county. If they're not, then we go on our statewide database to see if they're registered in another county in Ohio. If we determine they are, and then they meet all the criteria for a valid provisional ballot, then it's counted. If it does not, then it's not counted. We go through a very extensive process to go through all of our supplies, and under Ohio law, we have to be certified within 21 days of the election. So I think it's important to make the difference of the canvass period and certification. The canvass period is a 10-day period, but we will not certify this election until the 21st day after the election, which is November 27th. So if Ohio's in the play, many of the large counties probably will not have their official final until the 26th of November, and they'll formally certify that on the 27th.